Stars had not changed in 300 years. They still burned cold and distant above the blue planet that the galaxy had forgotten. But something else had changed, something the universe was about to discover. Commander Talus stood on the bridge of his scout ship, the Luminance, and watched the Sol system grow larger on his viewing screen. His gray skin reflected the light of the distant yellow sun as he studied the ancient records on his datapad. Earth, a dead world, a graveyard planet where a primitive species had burned under their own dying star. The Galactic Concord had abandoned this system 3 centuries ago. The solar flares had been too strong. The primitive humans had no technology to escape, no ships to flee, no allies to save them. The Concord had calculated their survival chances at less than 1%. They had packed up their observation stations, sealed the hyperspace lanes, and marked Earth as extinct in their records. Talus felt nothing about this. Species died all the time. The strong survived. The weak perished. This was the natural order of things. His mission was simple: survey the dead planet, check for valuable minerals, port back to the Volari Empire. Perhaps this forgotten rock could still serve some purpose as a mining colony. The Luminance dropped out of hyperspace and glided toward the third planet from the sun. Talus ordered his crew to begin scanning. The results came back exactly as expected. Ruined cities, dead oceans, a world of ash and silence. Far below, on the surface of that supposedly dead world, Admiral Kang Tae stood in a command center that should not exist. The room was buried 3 kilometers beneath the ground, carved into solid rock and reinforced with metals that the galaxy had never seen. Screens covered every wall, showing data from thousands of hidden sensors scattered across the planet and beyond. Tae was 67 years old. His hair had turned white long ago, and deep lines marked his face. But his eyes were sharp and clear, burning with a fire that had never dimmed. He was the son of survivors, the grandson of survivors. The great-grandson of those who had refused to die when the universe told them they should. Captain Park Eunice stood beside him, her uniform crisp and her posture straight. She was 30, years younger than Tae, but she had the same fire in her eyes. Every human did now. It was passed down from generation to generation, like a precious inheritance. "Admiral," she said quietly, "the alien ship has entered orbit. Single vessel, scout class, Volari design." Tae nodded slowly. He had been waiting for this moment his entire life. His father had waited. His grandfather had waited. 4 generations of humanity had prepared for the day when the galaxy would remember that Earth existed. How many crew? He asked. Sensors indicate 12 life forms aboard. Well, aliens. Coming to pick through the bones of a civilization they had left to die. Tae felt something cold move through his chest, but he kept his face calm. Anger was a tool, not a master. His grandmother had taught him that. He remembered her stories, the burning years she had called them. When the sun turned angry and fire fell from the sky, when billions died in the first months, and the aliens who had watched humanity from orbit packed up their equipment and flew away without a word, the humans had screamed for help. They had sent messages on every frequency they knew. They had begged the Galactic Concord to save them, to take their children, to show mercy. The Concord had not even replied, but humanity did not die. They fled underground. They sealed themselves in bunkers and caves and tunnels. They ate fungus and recycled their water and held each other in the darkness. Slowly, painfully, they survived. They found the alien bases that the Concord had abandoned. They studied the technology left behind. They learned. They adapted. They grew strong. Now, 300 years later, 4 billion humans lived beneath the Earth's surface and in hidden stations throughout the solar system. They had ships. They had weapons. They had technology that matched or exceeded anything in the galaxy. And they had patience. Endless, burning patience. "They're preparing to land," Yuna reported, targeting coordinates in the old Korean peninsula. Tae almost smiled. Aliens would find ruins there. Carefully constructed ruins, fake destruction designed to fool their sensors. Humanity had spent decades building the perfect lie. "Let them land," he said. "Let them walk on our soil. Let them think they're standing on a grave. Yuna looked at him with understanding in her eyes. And then we decide what to do with them. In orbit, Talus gave the order to descend. The luminance cut through Earth's atmosphere, leaving a trail of fire across the gray sky. The planet looked exactly like the records described. Dead, empty. A monument to failed evolution. He chose a landing site near the ruins of a large coastal city. His sensors showed collapsed buildings, rusted vehicles, and empty streets. It's perfect for a quick survey. The ship touched down with a soft thump. Talus gathered his survey team and opened the main hatch. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of dust and old stone. The Valari commander stepped onto the soil of Earth, his boots leaving prints in the gray ash. He looked around at the destruction and felt a moment of professional satisfaction. This world would make an excellent mining operation. No inhabitants to relocate. No environmental concerns. Just dead rock and valuable minerals. He did not see the tiny drones watching him from the shadows. He did not notice the microcameras hidden in the rubble. He did not know that every step he took was being recorded and analyzed by watchers far below. In the command center, Admiral Tay watched the alien walk across the fake ruins. He watched him scan the buildings and take samples of the soil. He watched him speak into his recording device, making notes about mineral deposits and extraction possibilities. "He thinks we're gone," Yuna said softly. "Yes," Tay replied. "He thinks he's walking through a cemetery." General Cho Sung appeared on one of the screens, his face serious. He commanded the Eastern Defense Grid, a network of weapons and shields that could turn the sky into fire if needed. "Admiral," he said, "say the word and we end this now." Tay shook his head. "Not yet. Let him explore. Let him find the truth on his own. It will be more effective that way." Because Tay knew something the alien commander did not. The lie was about to crack. Somewhere in those ruins, Talus would find something that should not exist on a dead world. And when he did, everything would change above. In the gray sky of Earth, the stars continued to burn cold and distant. But they were watching now. The whole galaxy was about to learn that humanity had not died in the fire. They had been reborn in it. Commander Talus walked through the ruins of the dead city, felt something wrong in his bones. He could not explain it. Everything looked exactly as it should. Collapsed buildings, rusted metal, empty streets covered in ash and dust. This was what a dead world looked like, but something was not right. He stopped beside the skeleton of a tall building and ran his scanner over the rubble. The readings came back normal. Concrete, steel, glass, the same materials. Primitive species always used before they learned better construction methods. Yet the decay pattern was too clean, too uniform. In 300 years, nature should have done more damage. Plants should have grown through the cracks. Animals should have made nests in the hollows. Instead, everything looked carefully preserved, like a museum display. Talus pushed the thought away. He was being foolish. This planet had suffered extreme solar radiation. Perhaps that explained the unusual preservation. Behind him, his survey team spread out through the ruins, taking samples and recording data. They moved with the casual confidence of people who believed they were alone. They had no reason to think otherwise, but they were not alone. Watching. From the shadows of a collapsed parking structure, Junior Science Officer Bei Mingi kept her breathing slow and steady. She wore the gray uniform of the Valari Empire, and her skin had been genetically altered to match their pale coloring. To anyone looking at her, she appeared to be just another alien crew member. She was not. Mingi was human. She had been born in the underground city of New Busan, trained from childhood for this mission. 12 years ago, she had been surgically altered and sent into the galaxy as a spy. She had worked her way onto Valari ships, learned their language, studied their culture, and sent secret reports back to Earth. There were hundreds like her scattered across the galaxy. Human agents hidden in plain sight, watching and waiting for the signal that would change everything. Today, that signal was close. She watched Talus examine the ruins and felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her wanted to hate him. His people had left her ancestors to die. But another part of her felt almost sorry for him. He had no idea what was about to happen. Talus moved deeper into the city, his scanner humming as it collected data. He climbed over a pile of rubble and entered what had once been a large public square. Statues lay broken on the ground. Fountains stood dry and cracked in the center. And there, in the middle of the square, he found something impossible. A flower. It was small and white, growing from a crack in the stone. Its petals were fresh and healthy, reaching toward the pale sunlight. Talus stared at it for a long moment, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. Plants did not grow on dead worlds. Not after 300 years of extreme radiation. Not without water or proper soil. This flower should not exist. He knelt down and scanned it. The readings made no sense. The plant was healthy, thriving even, and the soil around it showed traces of recent cultivation. Someone had planted this flower recently. Talus felt his heart beat faster. He stood up and looked around the square with new eyes. Now that he was paying attention, he could see other things that did not belong. The rubble was arranged too neatly. The dust had been disturbed in patterns that suggested foot traffic. And there, in the shadow of a broken wall, he could see marks that looked like tire tracks. "This is wrong," he whispered to himself. "This is all wrong." He activated his communication device. All teams returned to the ship immediately. Something is not right here. But before his crew could respond, the ground began to shake deep beneath the surface. General Cho Sung watched the alien commander discover the flower. It had been planted there on purpose, a small test to see how observant the visitors were. Talus had passed the test, which meant it was time for the next phase. "He knows," Sung said into his communicator. "Activate Protocol 7. Across the underground city, alarms began to sound. Soldiers moved to their positions. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. The hidden civilization of Earth prepared to reveal itself. In the ruins above, Talus ran toward his ship. His crew was shouting confused questions over the communication channel. The ground was still shaking, and now he could hear a deep, rumbling sound coming from somewhere below. He was 20 meters from the luminance when the Earth split open in front of him. Giant doors, perfectly camouflaged to look like ordinary ground, swung upward on massive hinges. Light poured from below, bright and artificial. And rising from the depths came figures in black armor. Moving with mechanical precision, the Silent Guard, humanity's elite soldiers. Each one wore a suit of powered combat armor that made them tower over the Valari. Their faces were hidden behind featureless helmets that reflected Talus-like dark mirrors. At their head stood Lieutenant Ohana. She was 28 years old. Born and raised in the military academies of the underground, she had trained for this moment since she could walk. Every simulation, every exercise, every sleepless night had led to this. She stopped in front of Talus and looked down at him. The alien commander had frozen in place, his scanner hanging forgotten from his hand. His gray face had turned pale with shock. "You left us to die," Hannah said. Her voice came through her helmet's translator, cold and clear. 300 years ago, when our sun burned and our people screamed for help, you turned away. You erased us from your maps. You forgot we existed." Talus tried to speak, but no words came out. "We did not forget," Hannah continued. "We remembered everything. Every message you ignored. Every ship that flew away. Every record that marked us as extinct." She leaned closer, her helmet almost touching his face. "We survived. We grew strong. And now you are standing on our world without permission, planning to dig up our home for minerals." Behind her, more doors were opening across the city. More soldiers were rising from the earth. And in the sky above, the clouds were parting to reveal shapes that should not exist. Ships. Hundreds of human ships. Decloaking in orbit, surrounding the tiny luminance like wolves around a lamb. "What do you want?" Talus managed to whisper. Hannah stepped back and gestured toward the hidden city below. "We want you to see what we have become. And then we want you to carry a message back to your masters." She reached up and removed her helmet. Beneath it was a young woman's face, strong and proud, with eyes that burned like stars. "Tell them," she said, "that humanity remembers. Tell them we are coming, and tell them to be afraid." In the shadows of the ruins, Minji watched her people reveal themselves to the galaxy. Tears ran down her altered face, but she did not wipe them away. After 300 years of hiding, humanity was finally stepping into the light, and the universe would never be the same. They did not kill Commander Talus. That would have been too easy, too quick, too merciful. Instead, they showed him the truth. Admiral Kangte personally escorted the Valari commander into the underground. They descended in a massive elevator, dropping through kilometers of solid rock, passing layer after layer of fortified defenses. Talus counted gun emplacements, shield generators, and weapon systems that he did not recognize. Each level was more advanced than the last. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors opened onto a sight that shattered everything Talus believed about the universe. New. Souls spread out before him like a dream made real. 80 million people lived in this single city, housed in towers that reached up to the cavern ceiling and down into even deeper levels below. Light panels simulated sunlight, casting warm rays across parks and gardens where children played. Trains moved silently through transparent tubes, carrying workers to factories and offices. Ships flew through designated air corridors, their engines humming with quiet power. It was a civilization. A thriving, advanced, impossible civilization hidden beneath the surface of a world the galaxy had declared dead. How? Talus whispered. It was the only word he could manage. Admiral Tay walked beside him, his hands clasped behind his back. When your Concorde abandoned us, you left behind your observation stations, your equipment, your archives. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Did you think we would not find them? Did you think we would not learn? They walked through the streets of New Seoul, and everywhere Talus looked, he saw proof of humanity's survival. Markets where vendors sold fresh food grown in hydroponic farms. Schools where children learned mathematics and science and history. Military academies where young soldiers trained with weapons that made Valari technology look primitive. We spent the first 50 years just trying to stay alive, Tay explained. The radiation was terrible. We lost billions. But we kept the knowledge alive. We taught our children to read. We preserved our science. And slowly, year by year, we rebuilt. He led Talus to a massive building in the center of the city. Inside, screens covered every wall, showing data streams from across the galaxy. Operators sat at consoles, monitoring communications, tracking ship movements, analyzing intelligence reports. We found your communication arrays, Tay continued. We learned your languages. All of them. For 300 years, we have been listening to every transmission the galaxy sends. We know your politics. We know your wars. We know your secrets. Talus felt sick. You have been spying on us? We have been learning from you. Tay turned to face him directly. And we have been preparing. Did you think we would forgive what you did? Did you think we would forget? At that moment, in the capital world of the Galactic Concorde, High Arbiter Nels was enjoying a peaceful morning. The Concorde had governed the galaxy for 10,000 years, and Nels had served as its leader for the last 50. He was old and tired and looking forward to retirement. His peaceful morning ended when every screen in his office suddenly went dark. A moment later, a human face, an old man with white hair and burning eyes. Behind him, the banner of a united Earth hung on the wall. This is Admiral Kangte of the United Terran Republic, the human said. I am speaking to all members of the Galactic Concorde. I am speaking to every species that abandoned my people 300 years ago. I am speaking to everyone who thought humanity was dead. Nell sat frozen in his chair. Around him, advisors were shouting, trying to cut the transmission, trying to trace its source. Nothing worked. The human signal had taken over every communication system in the Concorde. We survived, Tay continued. We rebuilt. We grew strong. And now we want the galaxy to know the truth. You left us to die, but we refused to die. You forgot about us, but we never forgot about you. We have been watching. We have been waiting. And now we are ready. The image shifted to show the underground cities of Earth, the military academies, the shipyards, the fleets. "We are not asking for war," Tay said. "We are not seeking revenge. We are simply announcing our existence. Humanity still lives, and we will be taking our place in the galaxy, whether you welcome us or not." The transmission ended. Silence fell across the Concord capital like a heavy blanket. Nels sat motionless for a long time. His advisors were still talking, but he did not hear them. He was remembering an old decision made long before he was born. The decision to abandon Earth? The decision that had seemed so logical at the time. The survival chances were less than 1%. The old report said. There was nothing to be gained by trying to help. Better to cut losses and move on. Now those losses had come back to haunt them. Far across the galaxy, Agent Bay Minji received a coded signal on her hidden communicator. 3 words that changed everything. Phase 1 complete. She was still aboard the Luminance, still wearing her Valari disguise. The ship had been seized by human forces and was now being escorted to Earth. But Mingi had other orders. She opened a secure channel and sent a brief message. Across the galaxy, 2,000 other human agents received the same signal. Begin Phase 2, on a Valari military base. An officer who had worked there for 15 years suddenly stow. PID reporting to work. In a Concord research facility, 3 scientists disappeared without a trace. On a dozen different worlds, humans who had lived hidden among aliens for years began to move. They did not cause destruction. They did not commit violence. They simply revealed themselves, one by one, proving that humanity had been everywhere, watching everything, learning every secret. The message was clear. There was nowhere in the galaxy that humans had not reached. No government they had not infiltrated. No technology they had not studied back on Earth. Admiral Tay stood in the communication center of New Sol and watched the chaos spread across the galaxy. Reports were flooding in from every corner of known space. The Concord was in panic. Species were demanding answers. Governments were falling into confusion. Captain Park Yuna stood beside him, her face troubled. "We have made enemies today, Admiral." "Many enemies. We already had enemies," Tay replied. "They just did not know it yet. Now everything is in the open. Now we can finally face each other honestly." He turned to look at a large screen showing the stars. Somewhere out there, fleets were being assembled. Meetings were being held. Decisions were being made about how to deal with the humans who had risen from the dead. "They will come for us," Yuna said. "They will send ships." Tay nodded. "Yes, they will. And we will be ready." He placed his hand on her shoulder. "We have been preparing for this moment for 300 years, Captain. Our ancestors built this civilization so that their children could stand as equals among the stars. We will not let them down." In her cell aboard the Luminance, Commander Talus sat alone with his thoughts. He had seen things that would haunt him forever. A dead world that was not dead. A primitive species that was not primitive. A grave that had become a fortress. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if there would be war or peace. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake 300 years ago. And now it was time to pay for it. The Galactic Concord did not believe in second chances. They believed in power. They believed in control. And they believed that any threat must be crushed before it could grow. Grand Admiral Voroth commanded the largest fleet the Valari Empire had assembled in a century. 40 warships, each one capable of destroying a planet, 20,000 soldiers ready to fight and die for their empire. Enough firepower to burn Earth down to its core and scatter the ashes across the solar system. Voroth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion, and watched the Sol system grow closer on his viewing screen. He was a large Valari, tall and broad, with scars on his gray face from old battles. He had spent his entire life in military service. He had crushed rebellions. He had conquered worlds. He had never lost a battle. He did not intend to start losing now. "The humans have made a foolish mistake," he announced to his officers. "They have revealed themselves too early. They should have stayed hidden and continued to grow in secret. Instead, they have invited destruction. His officers nodded in agreement. None of them believed that a species abandoned 300 years ago could pose a real threat. The humans had survived? Yes. They had built ships? Yes. But they were still primitives at heart. They could not possibly match Concord technology. The fleet entered the Sol system at high speed, weapons charged and shields raised. Vorath expected to find a handful of human vessels trying to defend their home. He expected a quick battle and an easy victory. He expected to return home as a hero. What he found was something else entirely. Fleet Admiral MCOX stood on the bridge of the Busan, humanity's flagship, and watched the alien fleet approach. He was 52 years old, a calm and patient man who had spent 30 years preparing for this exact moment. Beside him stood Captain Han Nari, his chief tactical officer, a woman of 34 with sharp eyes and a brilliant mind. "They're in range, Admiral," Nari reported. 43 vessels. Standard Volari formation. Weapons hot. Sioki nodded slowly. "And our forces?" Nari allowed herself a small smile. 412 ships in primary formation. Another 200 in reserve behind the moon. All systems operational. Around them, the human fleet waited in perfect silence. They had been hiding behind holographic screens that made empty space look full of asteroids. Now at COC's command. Those screens flickered and died. The Volari sensors suddenly went crazy. On the Dominion, Vorath watched in disbelief as ship after ship appeared on his tactical display. They emerged from nothing, filling the space between his fleet and Earth like stars winking into existence. Human ships. Hundreds of them. Each one sleek and deadly and armed with weapons that his sensors could not fully identify. "Where did they come from?" he demanded. "How is this possible?" No one had an answer. Siok opened a communication channel, broadcasting on all frequencies. His voice reached every ship in both fleets, and beyond that, it reached every monitoring station in the galaxy. The Concorde had spies watching from the edge of the system. Other species had sent observation probes. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when the dead world met its former masters. "This is Fleet Admiral MCOK of the United Terran Republic," he said calmly. "Grand Admiral Vorath, you have entered sovereign human space with a military force. This is an act of aggression. You have one chance to stand down and withdraw peacefully." Vorath's response came immediately. "You will surrender your ships and submit to Concorde authority. The humans are a protected species now. You will be relocated to a designated habitat world where you can be properly supervised." Siok almost laughed. Protected species. Supervised. As if humanity were animals to be kept in a cage. "That is not acceptable," he replied. 300 years ago, you calculated our survival chances at less than 1%. You decided we were not worth saving. You erased us from your records and moved on. But we survived, Admiral. We built everything you see around you from nothing but scraps and determination. And now you want us to surrender? To become your pets? He leaned forward, his voice hardening. "We are not your subjects. We are not your children. We are your equals. And if you cannot accept that, then you will learn it the hard way." Vorath cut the channel and gave the order to fire. The first Volari weapons lit up the darkness of space. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human fleet, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Volari gunners were confident. They had the best weapons in the galaxy. They did not have the best weapons anymore. Human shields absorbed the first volley without difficulty. Then the Busan returned fire. Captain Nari had designed the human weapons herself, building on 3 centuries of research and development. They used principles that the Concorde had not yet discovered. Technologies refined in secret laboratories far beneath Earth's surface. When they hit the Volari shields, they cut through like hot knives through soft butter. The first Volari ship exploded in a ball of white fire. Then the second. Then the third. The Battle of Seoul lasted 11 minutes. Human ships moved with a coordination that seemed almost supernatural. They anticipated Volari tactics before they were executed. They targeted weak points that should have been secret. They fought like they knew exactly what their enemies were going to do, because they did know. For 300 years, humans had been studying Concord military tactics. They had watched 1,000 battles through stolen communications. They had analyzed every formation, every strategy, every weapon. They knew their enemy better than their enemy knew themselves. Voreth watched his fleet die around him. Ship after ship fell silent, disabled, or destroyed. His officers were screaming for orders, but there were no orders to give. Everything they tried, the humans countered. Every attack, the humans blocked. Every retreat, the humans predicted. When the Dominion's shields finally failed, Voreth expected death. Instead, human soldiers boarded his ship and captured him alive. They did not torture him. They did not execute him. They simply took him prisoner and turned off his weapons. SIOK wanted witnesses, not martyrs. In the aftermath of the battle, Nari broadcast the combat footage to every corner of the galaxy. Every species watched as the mighty Volari fleet was destroyed in minutes. Every government saw the power that humanity had built in secret. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer prey. They were not victims to be pitied or primitives to be managed. They were a force to be respected. On Earth, in the underground cities, billions of humans watched the broadcast in stunned silence. They had known this day would come. They had trained for it, prepared for it, dreamed of it. But seeing it happen was something else entirely. Admiral Kong Tae watched from his command center, tears streaming down his old face. He had given his entire life to this moment. His father had given his life. His grandfather had given his life. For generations of sacrifice and suffering, all leading to this single victory. "We did it," Captain Park Yuna whispered beside him. "We actually did it." Tae nodded slowly. "The battle is won, but the war has just begun." He wiped his eyes and straightened his uniform. The Concord will not accept this defeat. They will regroup. They will plan. They will come again. And we will be ready, Yuna said. Guess Tae agreed. We will always be ready. That is what 300 years of darkness taught us. Never rest. Never forget. Never give up. In orbit above Earth, the human fleet maintained its formation. Below them, the blue planet that had once been a grave now shone with new light. Hidden no more. Forgotten no more. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy. And the galaxy was listening. 5 years changed everything. The galaxy that had existed before the Battle of Seoul was gone. In its place, a new order was slowly taking shape, built on foundations that no one had expected. The galactic concord had fractured. Species that had lived under Volari dominance for centuries began to question their leadership. How could the concord be trusted to protect them when they had abandoned an entire world to die? How could the Volari claim superiority when a supposedly primitive species had destroyed their fleet in 11 minutes? Revolutions erupted on a dozen worlds. The Volari Empire faced internal rebellion as younger generations demanded change. Old alliances crumbled. New ones formed. And at the center of it all stood humanity, watching and waiting and offering a different path. President Shinde addressed the United Terran Assembly from the Great Hall of New Seoul. The chamber was vast, carved from living rock and decorated with symbols from every culture that had survived the burning years. Representatives from every human settlement filled the seats, their faces lit by screens showing their leader's image. 5 years ago, Day said, we revealed ourselves to a galaxy that had forgotten we existed. We proved that we had survived. We proved that we were strong. But strength alone is not enough. Our ancestors did not suffer through centuries of darkness just so we could become conquerors. He paused, letting his words sink in. Behind him, a great window showed the surface of Earth, still scarred but slowly healing. Green was returning to the continents. Blue was spreading across the oceans. Life was coming back. We have a choice now, Day continued. We can use our power to punish those who abandoned us. We can take revenge on the species that left us to die. Or we can do something harder, something better. We can prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars. In the 5 years since the battle, humanity had established embassies on 40 worlds. Human technology, developed in isolation and refined through desperate necessity, had become valuable currency in galactic trade. Human engineers helped rebuild war-torn planets. Human doctors introduced new medical techniques. Human scientists shared discoveries that changed how other species understood the universe. Not everyone accepted the change. Some species still viewed humanity as a threat. Some governments refused to acknowledge the United Terran Republic. But slowly, one relationship at a time. Humanity was building something new. Admiral Kong Tae watched. Day's speech from his home in the rebuilt city of Busan. On the surface, he had retired 3 years ago, passing command to Fleet Admiral Park Yuna. His fighting days were over. But his memories remained sharp. Yuna sat beside him, her uniform crisp, even in the informal setting. She had led the fleet through 2 more confrontations with Concord forces, both times achieving victory without significant casualties. The galaxy had learned to respect human military power. "He's doing well," Yuna said, nodding toward the screen. "Day understands what we need," Tay smiled. "He understands that winning a battle is easy. Winning peace is hard." He looked out the window at the ocean waves breaking on the reconstructed shore. "We spent 300 years preparing for war. Now we must learn to prepare for something else." Far across the galaxy, in the great chamber of the Reformed Galactic Council, Agent Bei Minji stood before an audience that would have terrified her 12 years ago. Hundreds of alien faces watched her from tiered seats that rose toward a domed ceiling. Representatives from every major species and known. Space had gathered to witness this moment. Minji had removed her genetic disguise for the last time. Her true face was visible now, unmistakably human, with dark eyes and strong features that showed her Korean heritage. She wore the formal robes of a Terran ambassador, the first ever appointed to this position. "For 12 years, she said, I lived among you as one of you. I learned your languages. I studied your cultures. I came to understand your fears and hopes and dreams. And in all that time, I never stopped being human." She walked slowly across the speaking floor, her voice carrying clearly through the silent chamber. "Some of you think we came to conquer. Some of you think we want revenge. But you are wrong. We did not survive 300 years of darkness just to spread more darkness across the stars." She reached into her robe and withdrew something small and worn. It was a photograph, faded with age, protected by a thin plastic covering. She held it up so the cameras could capture it. The image showed a group of people huddled in an underground bunker. Their faces were thin and tired. Their clothes were ragged. But they were smiling, holding a hand-painted sign that read, "We will return." "This photograph was taken in the first year of the burning," Mingi explained. "These are my ancestors. They had lost everything. Their homes, their families, their entire world. They had every reason to give up, every reason to despair." She lowered the photograph and looked directly at the alien faces watching her. But they did not give up. They made a promise instead. They swore that one day their children, or their grandchildren, or their great-grandchildren would return to the stars. Not as conquerors, not as victims. As equals, she placed the photograph on the speaking podium, leaving it there for all to see. "Today, I am keeping that promise. 300 years ago, you left us to die. You calculated our chances and decided we were not worth saving. You made a choice based on numbers and logic and cold efficiency, but you forgot something important." Her voice rose, filling the chamber with quiet power. "You forgot that humans do not follow logic when we love something. You forgot that we do not accept calculated odds when our families are at stake. You forgot that we are stubborn and foolish and brave in ways that your equations cannot measure." She spread her arms wide, encompassing the entire assembly. "We are here now. Not because we want revenge. Not because we want to rule. We are here because our ancestors made a promise in the dark, and humans always keep their promises." Silence held the chamber for a long moment. Then, slowly, one representative began to applaud. Then another. Then another. The sound grew until it filled the entire space, washing over Minji like a wave. Not everyone was clapping. Some faces remained cold and hostile. Some species would never accept humanity, but enough were willing to try. Enough were ready to build something new. In the archives of the old Galactic Concord, a Valari historian sat alone in a dusty room surrounded by ancient records. Her name was Kelith, and she had spent her entire career studying dead civilizations. Now she had been given a new assignment. She opened the file for Earth, a document that had not been updated in 3 centuries. The status line still read, "Extinct." Kelith thought about everything she had seen in the past 5 years. The human fleets, the underground cities, the ambassador speaking before the council. She thought about the photograph of those survivors in their bunker holding their sign. Refusing to accept their fate, she deleted the word extinct. In its place, she typed a single word, returned, then. After a moment of thought, she added something else. A note that future historians might find useful: estimated survival probability, 0.003%. Actual outcome: complete civilizational recovery. Technological advancement exceeding galactic standards. Analysis note: human species demonstrates extreme resistance to extinction events. Recommend revised probability models for all future assessments. She saved the file and leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen. Somewhere out there, 4 billion humans were building a future that should have been impossible. They had turned a grave into a garden, a death sentence into a second chance, and they were just getting started. On the surface of Earth, the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Tay stood on his balcony and watched the light fade from gold to orange to deep purple. Stars began to appear in the darkening sky, the same stars his ancestors had dreamed about in their underground prisons. Yuna joined him, carrying 2 cups of tea. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching night fall over a world that had been reborn. "Do you think they understand yet?" Yuna asked quietly. "The aliens? Do you think they understand what we are?" Tay accepted his tea and took a slow sip. "Some of them do. Some never will." He smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "But it does not matter. We do not need them to understand us. We only need them to know that we are here, that we survived, that we remember." Above them, the stars burned cold and bright, just as they had for 300 years of darkness. But now those stars felt different. They felt closer. They felt like home. Humanity had returned to the galaxy, not as victims, not as conquerors, as something new. Something the universe had never seen before. A species that refused to die. A civilization that turned suffering into strength. A people who kept their promises, no matter how long it took, and somewhere in the great archives of the Reformed Council. A single word glowed on an ancient file, marking the end of one story and the beginning of another. Returned.